Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cisco Optics Podcast, where we talk about pluggable optics for networks. Single-mode fiber transformed telecommunications in the 1970s and 1980s by raising the ceiling for communication bandwidth over transoceanic distances. It took years of R&D to get there, though. Remember, we're sending light through tens of kilometers of glass without regeneration. I mean, imagine how pure the glass of an 80-kilometer thick window needs to be in order to see through it. This is episode 51, and we conclude our conversation with Roisin McCool, expert in fiber networks for telecommunications and scientific instrumentation at Corning Optical Communications. We talk about fiber dispersion's effect on communication and coherent optical signals. Roisin McCool is a senior market and technology development manager for Corning Optical Fiber and Cable, specializing in single-mode fiber and access networks. She provides technical and market insight for Corning's global fiber and cable product line management teams. Roisin has 30 years of experience in engineering and optical communications systems and subsystems, including many years designing networks for advanced radio telescopes. Roisin has held project management and coordination lead roles in diverse teams throughout her career. Roisin is the acting chair of the Women in Fiber Committee for the FTTH Council Europe and is the winner of the Corning Optical Communications You Make a Difference Award 2022 for her leadership of diversity initiatives in Corning. Roisin holds a master's degree in electrical and electronic engineering from the University of Nottingham, United Kingdom, and is a chartered member of the Institute of Engineering and Technology. And now join me as I talk with Roisin McCool.
The first installation of that fiber was between New York and Washington, D.C.
So I heard a story,
and
I don't know if you've heard this or not. I heard a story that those three people you mentioned who made the first low-loss fiber said, if we had known when we started that it would be this hard and take this long, we never would have started. Have you heard that at all? That's what someone told me. So it's like
no,
third or fourth-hand information.
I haven't heard that, but it sounds very similar to the code of the software engineer, which was we did it because we thought it would be easy.
Well, fortunately, they were perseverant and just didn't give up.
Yes, exactly. And then since that time, then it's that story of improvement on attenuation, addition of characteristics that are useful to specific applications, the quality architecture so that every fiber is, does what it says it will do and that people can rely on that. And then all the way down to 2017, where Corning delivered its 1 billionth kilometer of fiber.
Wow.
We didn't talk about dispersion.
Right.
Yeah, dispersion matters. And it's really interesting because it mattered for long-haul networks for a long time. So what is dispersion, right? What's chromatic dispersion? So chromatic dispersion happens because a pulse of light in the fiber will have very small differences in frequency. And those frequencies will travel at slightly different rates within the fiber, right? So what happens is you're going to have some frequencies that are traveling faster, some frequencies that are traveling slower. And that, at the receiver, what that does is it spreads the pulse.
And that difference that difference in the velocity that's dispersion, right? That's what dispersion is.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what happens is if you get enough dispersion, subsequent pulses are going to crash in to the pulse before and the pulse after. And that's called intersymbol interference. And that's a real problem in transmission systems because it makes it difficult for the receiver to identify whether it's got a 0 or a 1.
Right.
Now,
And in our labs, we often look at eye diagrams, and so you can see
Yes,
the effect of
that's
that
right.
as the eye
That will
closure.
close the eye diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exact. It'll close the eye diagram. Now, in the past, that has been a problem on long haul links because the further you go, the more of that dispersive effect you've got. But what happened recently well, I say recently, but in this sort of past decade, is that coherent transmission has become pervasive in long haul networks. And coherent transmission has digital signal processing, which will extract this chromatic dispersion impact. And so chromatic dispersion has become less of an issue in modern long-haul networks. However, the short-haul links, so the intensity modulation direct detect links, they're getting faster and faster and faster.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as your bit pulse gets smaller and smaller, the more likely chromatic dispersion is to have an impact on it.
Right, because they're closer together. So even just a little bit of bleeding,
Yeah.
if they're closer together, is going to cause that intersymbol interference.
Yeah, yeah. And because the shorter the pulse, then for the same delay, you're going to have more of a percentage of that pulse which is impacted.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's actually short haul links that are concerned about dispersion. And in the past, it's been 1550 because that's the low loss region of an optical fiber, and that's the region that long haul uses. But even for these short haul links, because they're such high bit rates, even at 1310, which is the window in which fiber has its dispersion minimum, they're now concerned about that chromatic dispersion. And so that's something that we have to take care of. And the other aspect of noise within a system that can impact the ability of the receiver to receive error-free transmission is polarization mode dispersion. Now, polarization mode dispersion happens because fiber is what is called an anisotropic material or an anisotropic crystal, which means that when light hits the fiber, it actually transmits, although it's a single mode, it transmits in two orthogonal polarizations.
Mm-hmm.
And those polarizations are always orthogonal, but they travel through the fiber and they sort of scramble their direction. And as they travel through the fiber, what can happen is that one of those polarizations may travel faster than another. And again, at the receiver, you end up with constructive and destructive interference because of the difference in rate of travel of these two orthogonal polarizations. And that creates what's called fading. So you get signal and then it fades away, and then you get some more signal and it fades away. That's the impact of polarization mode dispersion.
Okay. And
I think we have at least covered dispersion there for single mode fibers.
With the polarization mode dispersion, isn't there also the pulse spreading effect similar to chromatic dispersion, where the two I mean, they travel at such, if they go far enough, they'll travel at such different velocities that the two pulses will spread a little bit.
Yeah, what you see because the receiver is a square law receiver, what you end up seeing is both of those orthogonal polarizations as they hit the receiver, and you'll see the positive and positive, so constructive and destructive interference. And so what you see on the output of the receiver is what looks like a spread pulse with a dip in the middle. And that's the fade in. If you get too much dip in the middle, you're effectively, that's where the fade in will come in.
I see. Okay.
Because the receiver circuitry will see that as a 0 when it's actually a 1.
Well, this has been great. I think you can go have your tea now.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can have a break as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. That was the 8th and final part of my conversation with Roisin McCool. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Hey, we have a new website. It's optics.podcastpage.io. That's optics.podcastpage.io. You can either listen there or use the same podcast platform you've been using all along. Please subscribe. Better yet, leave a review, especially if you use Apple Podcasts. Remember, we're part of the Cisco Podcast Network, where you can find other great Cisco podcasts too. We also have educational videos on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and search on Cisco Optics. Thank you for listening. This is Pat Chow, Product Manager at Cisco Optics. Until next time.